What is going on, Diesel Nation? We're excited to have you guys with us today on the Diesel Podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube and aren't subscribed, make sure and click the subscribe button, turn on notifications, like and comment. Let us know what you think about the episode. If there's a question that we didn't ask and an answer that wasn't on the podcast, let us know. We'd love to be able to get those answered for you. Or if you have a guest suggestion, we're always checking YouTube comments. Love to see your guys' feedback and then incorporate that into future episodes. Today I'm going to be chatting with Bryant, and he has a really cool story with his background in trucks, diesel trucks, off-roading, and I wanted to learn more about some of the endurance races and longer races that are out there and what goes into the decision of whether you're going to run a diesel vehicle or gas, some of the pros and cons to both, and how chase vehicles, some of the ways that diesel really excel at that. So he's going to share with us his experience, not just with racing, but also team building, getting the crew together to go tackle these races and a bunch of other things. Before we get to it, though, I want to remind you guys our friends over at Kershaw Knives have a 20% off site-wide discount code for you. If you use code 20diesel at kershaw.kaiusa.com, you get 20% off site-wide, and they just had a bunch of new knives release. We did an episode recently with them. A bunch of really cool things. So if you're in the market for a knife, whether it's for hunting, fishing, EDC, something to have, in a toolbox around the house, they've got something for every budget. Definitely make sure and take advantage and save that 20%. All right, let's get to today's podcast with Bryant and learning more about off-roading, gas vehicles, diesel, and what goes into this type of racing. Bryant, welcome to the Diesel Podcast. I appreciate you reaching out to me. I've followed. Well, I'm into racing a lot, and I know you're involved in so many different aspects of it. So when you reached out, I was like, this is going to be great to be able to chat about off-road racing, diesel trucks, a bunch of different stuff. So welcome to the Diesel Podcast.
Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate you having me on. I'm looking forward to talking with you about it.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I think that if you're into going fast, it doesn't necessarily matter exactly what it is. You get bit by that bug, and whatever it is, you take an interest in it. And I don't know a lot about off-road racing. I've seen it. I've kind of from afar, paid attention a little bit, but it just seems, this is what I really wanted to chat with you about, is how challenging it seems, because normally drag racing, diesel drag racing, I know a lot goes into it, but it's in this straight line for seconds at a time. And off-road racing, you think of hours and the physical toll. So where did that passion start for you? How did you get interested in that?
So I grew up in deep South Texas, down by South Padre Island. I was born in Brownsville, and I was raised in a small town called Los Fresnos. And I was not involved in any motorsport down there in that fashion. No off-road racing for sure. I don't come from a motorsport family. However, when I was a kid, about 7 years old, we visited some friends of my parents, and they sat me down on the couch down in Brownsville, and the guy was showing me some pictures out of a photo album, not on Facebook or anything, but a legit photo album. And he was involved in all kinds of motorsport in Mexico, Formula One, NASCAR, sprint cars, Porsche Cup, things like that they were racing in Mexico. And as we got towards the back of that photo album, the pictures started getting a little dustier, not because they were old and hadn't been looked at, but the actual picture was of a dusty place. And there were square body Chevys and Volkswagen Beetles and things of that nature in it. And that really piqued my interest. And it turns out that was Baja. And those pictures were taken during some of the Score off-road races in Baja. And they were just ingrained in the back of my brain. And from that moment on, my bucket list, the very top of my bucket list, was to race my own truck in Baja at some point. That was my life's goal, to do that. Fast forward a few years, I didn't have any opportunities to get into off-road racing after that for quite a few years, almost 20 years. But I continually researched it and read about it. And if it was on TV or whatever, I would re-stoke that fire of interest in it. I went through a period of doing diesel performance stuff. In 2012, I brought a 4-cylinder 7-second turbo diesel from Thailand to the United States to race at the NHRDA World Finals. Built a couple 700-800 horsepower trucks and had some fun with that, put on some drag races and things like that. Putting on those events taught me that I enjoyed creating opportunities for others to participate in something. So that was a skill that I tried to hone. Putting on an event, putting on a dyno day, putting on a drag race, something of that nature. At that time, it was all diesel performance related, but I still had this itch to do off-road. I wanted to go to Baja, and I wanted to figure it out and make my way into that world. In 2015, I realized that local to me, at that time, I was living in the Midland, Odessa area in West Texas, working in the oil field. And I realized that there was desert racing in that area that had actually been going on for a long time, but it was not very well publicized. So not a lot of people outside of those small circles knew about it. Somehow, I can't remember exactly how, I met up with a guy that was involved in that. He had a Class 7 truck, which is a 6-cylinder, like a Ford Ranger,
Okay.
heavily modified, of course, full fiberglass body and all that, no doors and everything. We met at a local off-road park in the area, and he took me for a ride in it, and it was just as amazing as I imagined it would be. I'm not a big V6 kind of guy, but it didn't matter because we jumped, 15 feet in the air, and it landed like you were sitting on the couch, and it was just amazing. I helped him I helped him pit for a couple of his races, helped him on his pit crew at a couple local races, and then he asked me if I wanted to start an off-road race association. And I said, absolutely, that's what I would like to do. Because of my previous experience putting on events, I knew that putting on events was a good way to potentially make a career out of this and to spread the word about it so that more people could get involved and hopefully feel the excitement that I've felt being a part of the sport. That same year, I had a compound turboed Cummins. It was about 1,000 horsepower truck, 818 on fuel with a 300 shot of nitrous on it, and had that street truck. It was super clean. I bought it from a buddy of mine, cruised it around a little bit, and then I said, you know what? If we're going to do this off-road stuff, let's do this off-road stuff. And so I sold that truck, and that put a little disposable income in my pocket. I called up a couple buddies of mine that I'd been friends with through the diesel stuff, and I knew they had the means, time and financially to get involved in off-road racing, and thought they might be interested. And I proposed to them. I said, hey, do you guys want to go race a truck in Baja? And they said, yeah, that sounds awesome. So 2015, like I said, I jumped in head first. I mean, I did not hesitate at all. Sold my Cummins street truck, started a race association, put together my team to race in Baja with our own truck, and we started shopping. And from then on, it's just been a whirlwind of off-road stuff. We went up to Canada and bought our truck. We have a 2004 Dodge 2500 four-wheel drive crew cab short bed. It is a Hemi truck and not a diesel. I can get into that here in a little bit about my personal preference for the race vehicle being set up that way. When I bought the truck, a lot of people asked me, hey, are you going to put a 12 valve in it? Are you going to put a diesel in that or whatever? No, I'm going to keep it a Hemi. It's much more reliable in the desert under those conditions that way. And yeah, so we put the team together. We found our truck. It was within our budget. It was actually under budget. And here we are off to the races. Literally, we started racing the very next year. So yeah, it's been a pretty wild last couple of years.
That's really interesting to me. It kind of piques my curiosity because I don't know. Is when you're looking at a vehicle to race in the desert, what advantages does you say that Hemi or a gas-powered engine have that would, if you had a diesel, would just have some drawbacks or just not fit that particular role?
Right. So, in my opinion, there are a couple diesels that race, turbo diesels. I think there's a 4-cylinder truck out of Arizona, I believe, and I'm pretty sure it's a 4BT, and it's cool. It does a pretty good job. It's pretty reliable to them. However, in my opinion, the two major disadvantages for me. Okay, let me caveat that by saying, in desert racing, the way that I have developed my program, my race program, is all about mitigating risk. We have to mitigate as much risk as possible because there is so much risk that we cannot mitigate
Yeah.
with the course being so long and the time required to drive it and unexpected things jumping out at you at night. There's just so much extra risk that I need to make sure that I have my hands on all the risk that's possible and cut it down. And that risk includes the function of the truck, reliability, safety, things of that nature. So the two major drawbacks, in my opinion, for running, like say my exact same truck, but with a Cummins in it instead, are number one, the weight. There's a lot of extra weight over the front axle. Extra weight over the front axle means when it comes off the ground, it doesn't fly flat and true. It's nose heavy. When it comes back to earth, it's extremely hard on the front suspension pieces, and we're doing this for anywhere from 170 200 miles to 1300 miles. So we need to make sure, and we are racing, we're not just tooling around in the desert. We are racing. Even though I'm not extremely competitive, we need to get to the finish within the allowable time limit, which means we got to push the truck.
Yeah.
And so that weight is the first thing that I'll bring up when trying to compare running, say, a Cummins motor versus the Hemi motor in that particular truck. It's just too heavy. It's too heavy, in my opinion. The second thing that I consider is boost. In my opinion, boost and silt beds don't mesh well together. That super fine talcum powder dirt, any deficiency in your air filtration system in a turboed vehicle can cause a catastrophic failure. Whereas a naturally aspirated gas motor, if you have a failure in your air system, one, it's a lot more direct. It's filtered directly to throttle body. There's no intercooler. There's not a bunch of bins. There's no piping. It's a whole lot less pieces to go wrong. But a naturally aspirated motor, if you get a little leak in part of that system, one, it'll just pull air through that leak. It won't have a boost leak. And two, it'll chew up a little bit of dirt. An NA motor can eat some dirt and it'll be okay. It won't be great, but it'll be okay. A turboed vehicle or a supercharged vehicle cannot eat dirt at all because it will rapidly degrade turbo systems and superchargers to the point where you have oil leaks and then oil consumption and then runaway or complete failures in other parts of the motor. But naturally aspirated, and those are my two: weight and boost. I don't do boost in the desert. I'm not a big fan of it. It's a lot more risk, and I have to keep the truck alive. So those are my two major decision makers for not going with a diesel.
That really got me thinking about a lot of different stuff, because I think of drag racing. I think of listeners that we have that they'll message in and they'll say, hey, I've listened to you for 5 or 6 or 7 years, and I've always wanted to start my own shop or start my own construction company, or I want to do these things, or I'm pursuing this dream. And I don't think eliminating risk is, I can't think of anyone that's put that at the very top of what they're aiming to do when they try a new venture.
Right.
And
yeah.
That just caught my attention a lot. Thinking about that is how you can, I don't want to say ensure success, but I think how you can give yourself the best chance at it, pursuing, like you were mentioning, racing 200 or 300 miles, 150 miles, or 1300, or you're jumping into a whole new career, or you decide, hey, I'm going to turn this truck into, a diesel drag truck or any other type of racing application. When you look at your racing program, you look at where you want to go, how much would you attribute that risk assessment and balancing it to your success or the potential that you feel you and your team have moving forward?
I would say very high, 90% or more. And in addition to the risk assessment, the way that I develop my race program, our primary goal when we were out on a race course is not to win. I'm not there to win. I'm there to finish. I'm there to finish on time. And with that comes for two reasons. One, winning is very expensive, and all of this is paid for out of my own pocket. So finishing is extremely important to me because of all of that I have to devote to the program: time, money, energy, all of those things. It's very, very important that we are utilizing the vehicle and our pit strategy and everything in a way that we mitigate the risk so that we can get to the finish line or to the next driver or to the next section, whatever it is. It's always the number one goal: get to the end of whatever it is that you're doing. You've got to get to the end on time. And and then in addition to that, beat me not being very competitive allows me to rein back whenever I get passed by somebody or I feel a time crunch or whatever. I don't get the red mist that you see a lot of drivers get when they get passed, or they come up on some dust thinking they may be able to pass somebody. I don't care. I don't care at all. So having that as my primary goal, green flag to checkered flag. We've got to see both flags. If we don't see both flags, I consider it a failure, in my opinion. No matter the reason that we didn't see both flags, the goal should always be, if you start, you must finish. And in addition to that, the vehicles that I'm driving are pretty limited. My truck is extremely durable, but it's not very fast in these conditions, but it'll get there. And I find that it's more useful to show people that if you start, you have to finish. And no matter what happens in the middle, you've got to keep going and finish. And so it's very important to me to create opportunities for myself to where we don't have to give up or we don't have to quit. If we're able to keep the truck together and keep the team together, then we can fix broken parts to some degree, and we can change flat tires, and we can refuel the truck, and we can deal with complicated terrain and all of those challenges. But the goal being to get to the finish line is the most important thing when we're actually out on the race course. And mitigating that risk for that challenge provides great success because we're able to keep the truck together and we're able to have a good plan of what should happen, and knowing that there will be some things happening that we don't plan for, but if we plan for everything we possibly can, then we're prepared and we're ready. We're ready for those situations that we know might come up, and then there are, of course, like I said before, some situations that we didn't know would come up, but we being prepared for the previous ones leaves room for us to be able to jump on those sudden changes without a lot of stress because we're ready for all the other stuff. Yeah. So we can kind of segment that in our minds. Okay, we're ready for all this. So if it happens, it's not a big deal. That way, when something else happens that we didn't prepare for, didn't know might happen, we have mental capacity to prepare for that, and to handle that situation because we're prepared in all of our other ways.
So there seems to be, while there is a ton of synergy between the type of racing and the perspective you have, and then also, with diesel as well. And one of the really cool things, though, that we were chatting about before the podcast and everything was about some of the diesel vehicles you do have, that are part of your team. And I wanted to ask you about that role and how they fit or how they help you in this whole program and development that you're doing, and just the kind of role that they serve for you when you're out there racing 200 miles to 1,300 miles.
Sure. So the support vehicles in this sport are called chase trucks, usually. You also have some that are called pre-runners, and they do exactly as their name entails. A pre-runner is utilized before the race to pre-run the race course so that you can make notes and write down dangers and cautions and things like that, if that's allowed during that race. Sometimes it's not. And then chase trucks, as their name implies, chase the race vehicle down the course, or usually not on the course, but on side roads and down the highway, and then through access points and things of that nature. Those vehicles get utilized the most in places like Baja, where the course is so large that you don't come back to the same pit area. And so your pit has to move. At a lot of the smaller races, I say smaller, at a lot of the shorter loops, there's usually stagnant pit areas where you don't have to move. And my truck is able to complete a full lap. Like, for example, I'm prepping right now to go race the Mint 400 in March. And that's about a 97 to 100 mile loop. And I can do at least one lap on a tank of fuel without having to refuel. So my pits will be set up with chase trucks, but they'll be set up and they'll just sit there. They don't have to follow me around the course, because the pit areas are set every 30 miles, roughly. There's 3 of them. I'll have people at each one waiting for me to come by with fuel, tires, tools, things, snacks, things of that nature, whatever. Like I said, mitigating risk. So we plan for whatever might happen that I may need some help on. And sometimes I'll stop and sometimes I won't. The chase trucks are where I have all my diesel stuff. My personal chase truck is a 2013 Ram 3500 4-wheel drive dually, and 1-ton truck, service bed on it, big rack over the roof of the truck. It's full of lights and tools, and I carry spare parts, transmissions, axles, tires, fuel, welding machines. I mean, it's a mobile shop. Everything that's in it is designed to keep the race truck running. That is its primary goal. In addition to that, I also hook it to a trailer and haul my 9,000 pound race truck out to the races. So when we're cruising down the road, we're just under 26K all the way down, rolling to these races. So it's a sight to see. It's all stickered up and everything's color matched and all that. You know, they look good together and all that. And the racing that I've done, being that I race a Dodge truck, is pretty rare. There are not very many of them anymore. There used to be, like this one you can see behind me, that was a Walker Evans truck, first gen, tin grill type square Dodge. And back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, Dodge actually raced corporate at a corporate level. They had Walker Evans was involved in that. Rod Hall, who is my off-road racing idol, he raced corporately for Dodge back then, and then they kind of got out of it, and they haven't been in it until hopefully I can pull them back in and have them send me a new truck to try to build into a race car and do some stock style truck racing. But that is pretty unique that I race a Dodge. Like I said, there's not very many out there. At the last Mint 400, I raced on the same day as all of the multi-million-dollar trophy trucks, and my truck towered over all of them. And it's a $20,000 farm truck. I mean, it's not a super high dollar truck, but it's just enormous in its presence. And so I thought that was pretty cool. Because of that uniqueness, I was able to bring in some guys to help me pit. That's the Dodge Trucks Extreme group. And they all have desert-built Dodge trucks. Long travel suspension, mostly Thurin, Carly, that type of thing. Big King shocks, bypass shocks front and rear, and springs and all the good stuff so they can go boogie out in the desert at high speed. And fiberglass fenders and lights and all the cool stuff that we have. All these trucks are outfitted like that. And what makes my program pretty unique is that when we roll into a race, all of the support vehicles are all Dodge or Ram trucks, all of them. And I don't, sorry to anybody that wants to come pit for me, but if it's not a Dodge, you can't bring it. you're more than welcome to come, but you have to ride in somebody else's truck, because I want to keep that image. Most of those are diesels. So they have the power and torque to haul the race car, and better fuel economy than towing with a gas motor or something like that, and they can, while they are not racing, they can get through the off-road terrain that's required if I break down on the race course somewhere and need a rescue or need parts or something brought out to me, if that's allowed in the event that we're competing in. And so those guys have their truck set up exactly for that. My chase truck is set up for that. It's got Thurn suspension and 2.5-inch Kings all the way around, and it is actually served as a sweep and recovery vehicle for the Nora Mexican 1000. Maybe 5 or 6 times it's been all the way down the Baja Peninsula on and off road, even though it weighs 12,000 pounds. And it's a beast. So the chase truck is where a lot of my diesel stuff is, and its job is to make sure the race car stays alive. And another unique function of having a chase crew and pit crew set up like that is that if perchance something happens to my race truck suspension wise, axles or whatever, I can steal parts off the chase trucks literally and put my race truck back together, because we run the same axles, and we run the same hubs, and we run the same drive shafts and all that kind of stuff. So I can scrounge parts from these support vehicles if that means continuing and finishing the race. So I like that function as well. Everything we have works together. All the pieces work together. And that's, it's not just coincidence that it's like that. It's a little bit by design.
I like how that all fits together, and I think one of the big things that I just started thinking about was the team that you mentioned, and from the planning to the chase vehicles to everything that goes into it. And I imagine trying to do this by yourself would be near impossible, or it'd be really hard to do the start and the finish that you mentioned. How do you build that team, or does it just kind of find you because the passion of off-road racing is existing with all these guys?
So it's come both ways. A lot of things have just fallen into place, which are indicators to me that I'm doing the right thing and that I'm where I'm supposed to be. When things get easy, in such a challenging environment, when things are easy, it could either mean something bad is about to happen or you're doing it right. And I'd like to think that with my team that I'm doing it right. Now there is, to be honest, 90% of the work is me by myself. Going after potential partners in the race program, sponsorship type things. Most of the wrenching that gets done on the truck is me by myself. I do have people that come out and help, and I am extraordinarily grateful for that. But even though I do most of that by myself, logistics planning and pit strategy and, finding out where we're going to stay and how much fuel is this going to cost and all those kinds of things, I can't do it without these guys. It's like you said, it is near impossible to do this without at least a handful of people that believe in you and understand what you're trying to do and can have enjoyment from it, and that's the biggest thing when I bring people in, is I want them to enjoy it. It's a lot of work, and we're going to be up long hours, and I'm going to try not to be super rude and all that when I'm frustrated and everything. But that cohesiveness comes because of the energy that I'm putting into it. That attracts more energy.
Yeah.
But it also sometimes brings in some people that just don't quite mesh, and sometimes you have to work through those challenges. I've done it in the past. I had some people on the team that didn't quite work out just right, and had to say, hey, this isn't working the way that we were planning on it, and thanks for your help and all that, but it's just not quite right to make sure that we have good forward progress and success with the program. It comes kind of both ways. I really lucked out with the Dodge Truck Extreme guys. They are desert minded individuals. They love being in the desert, and they love what these Dodge and Ram trucks are capable of in the desert. And so me being able to represent them is an honor. And I also really like that my race program represents a lot of blue collar type work, and people. My truck is, like I said, it's a 3/4 ton, 4-wheel drive, crew cab, short bed Dodge pickup. When there's no stickers on it and it's all white, aside from the roll cage in it, it looks like a work truck. It just looks like everybody else's truck. My dad has one of those, or my uncle's got a truck like that, or I have a truck like that I use for work and this and that. And so I'm extremely grateful that I get to represent that crowd as well, with my truck, and showing that, hey, you can do this with, beat up old farm truck if you want, and a little bit of effort. You can come out here and play in the desert with me. But the team thing, I've been very fortunate. A lot of what I do is pretty calculated, and I'm not trying to say things in a way that make it sound like I know more than anybody else. I learn all the time on what we're doing, but I take my time to make my decisions based on their future impact. And that includes putting together my team and how I want to be represented and how I want to represent those people, and what kind of support I need and what are they able to provide. And, will the pit crew get into fights while I'm out on the race course, and then I show up to get fuel and there's nobody there because everybody got pissed off and left? Are we going to have an awkward drive home from the race with everybody in the truck? Things of that nature all come to mind. And I feel like trying to remain positive with it has been a huge benefit, in that it's allowed these opportunities to just happen, and they mesh very well. And I'm super thankful for how things have progressed this far and what it's showing me the future can look like. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I really, that side always has interested me, whether it's been sports or motorsports or business or racing, is just how the team is such a huge part of it. You can have the best equipment, the best engine, the best suspension, the best vehicle, and if nobody works together, it's not going anywhere. And
Right.
you see the opposite, where you can really extend your potential, with the right team. And something I was just thinking of right now is, when I was younger, I didn't start out as like a Cummins guy. That wasn't really what my interest was. It wasn't Dodge trucks. And I think it was because I would always see Ford and GM and everybody had them. And I grew up in a Ford house and I had to be different than, my dad and everything else. But that's what pulled me in originally. And we're talking about the Offroad group. When I first started getting into trucks, the first truck I ever bought was a Dodge Ram 1500 with a Hemi. It was like the first brand new truck I got. That's what I wanted. And I remember seeing these different, off-road groups or racing groups or just truck guys, that we'd all get together. And I was curious, in your racing world, which of the brands are really involved with it? Like, is Ford and GM,
Right.
are they hands-on? I think you mentioned that the Dodge just kind of, Rams kind of step back a little bit.
Right.
But I was really curious, who is really hands-on in that?
So for sure. So at the corporate factory level, Ford is number one in their support. They sponsor a lot of the big events. They are putting in a lot of effort. A lot of their stuff right now is Bronco focused. So if you look at Ultra 4 and King of the Hammers, those two race programs, Ford is sponsoring a handful of factory Bronco race cars that are flying directly underneath the Ford flag. They sponsor the Best in the Desert events. They sponsor a bunch of stuff. And Ford is, as much as I don't want to say it, they're doing a really good job of connecting this recent burst of interest in dirt sports and in dirt traveling to their consumer through racing. They're doing an excellent job at it. I'm really impressed. Not impressed enough that I want to go try to get a Raptor, but you know, they're doing a really good job of it. And next to that, Chevrolet has factory racing. They race a half ton, and they race I guess it's a Colorado, so a quarter ton or whatever that is now. Both, I believe they're both gas motors. Yeah, it's the ZR2 in both of those. Those are both raced by Chad Hall, who is Rod Hall's son. And so he's had his whole life was growing up through corporate racing involvement, and he's been able to continue a relationship with Chevrolet Performance. And they actually use his trucks as R&D vehicles to test potential aftermarket, dealership sold aftermarket suspension pieces for the ZR2, actual testing of production model vehicles. That gets done through desert racing, through the whole program with the Chevrolets. And they race fairly unopposed. So Ram, let's put a truck together and let's go out there and race the halls and give Chevrolet some legit competition. And you see a little bit of factory support from other manufacturers. A couple years ago at the Nora Mexican 1000, Volkswagen brought out a fully electric ID4 and raced it. And it was driven by the primary driver was Tanner Faust. And I got to pull that thing up a couple hills in my chase truck as I was doing sweep and recovery. There were a couple sand hills that it had some issues with. I pulled it up, a couple of those, but it finished the race. Factory, they had factory support. They had engineers and designers and electronics people, and the heads of marketing and programs were all there. I got to meet those guys from Volkswagen corporate. That was pretty cool. Toyota has some dealership level support and a little bit of corporate support. This last Baja 1000, Lexus brought a vehicle over from Japan and raced it, and it was supported on track by another race vehicle that was a Toyota Land Cruiser. So it's there a little bit. Ford is number one in desert racing. Most frequently, Chevrolet would be number two as far as corporate support and sponsorships and seeing those types of vehicles on the race course. Ford also at the 1000 brought a Ranger Raptor from Australia and raced it stock, and I'm pretty sure they finished as well. So there is corporate support every now and then. Sometimes you see some weird things. A couple years ago at the San Felipe 250 in Baja, Lordstown Motors brought an electric truck that they entered into the race. I think it made it like 20 miles or something. It was not quite as successful as maybe it could be. In the past, Hummer has raced vehicles that were stock, H1 style Hummers. That was part of the Rod Hall program. But it's really tapered off in the last few years, which is frustrating for me as someone who doesn't really have trophy truck aspirations. That's the upper echelon of racing. Those are now, in order to be competitive in a trophy truck, you have to buy a $2 million all-wheel drive trophy truck. I don't have that kind of money. I can't spend that on that type of thing. And if someone were to give me one, of course I would do it. But if I'm going to be building my own program for myself, I want to race vehicles that the everyday person can recognize and see, hey, I know what that is. That looks exactly like what I have in my garage. And, or people will be on the fence, and this is the actual part of racing corporate. And they'll say, hey, I'm in the market for a new truck. This one just finished that off-road race, and it's almost identical to what you find on the showroom floor. Let's go buy that one.
Exactly.
So selling cars, race on Sunday, sell on Monday is still a thing. And all of the automakers now are putting a lot more effort into vehicles capable in the dirt. I mean, even Subaru sells a lifted car on all terrains from the factory. So let's get some of that involvement back around, and let's race some stock vehicles. I think it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll definitely make sure we tag Ram trucks on this when we release. But
Yeah,
I think we both probably see it. If you from the racing side, the event side, I see it in what we do. Is there's certain companies that are really involved in the enthusiast side, and there's ones that aren't. And
right.
I think, if I look all the way back, and probably, with my generation, it was video games like Gran Turismo and stuff, and you'd see this particular brand, or I watched something on ESPN2 or the racing channel, and it's like you just mentioned, I see, these Ford logos everywhere. I see this Ford truck. Well, I can go down to my local Ford dealer and there's a Raptor, or maybe there's another pickup truck that I want to build into something.
Right.
And it's a great way to, I think, really be able to get a lifelong customer and an enthusiast. And so I definitely love to see that. I've always been really interested in the corporate level racing. I mean, it even goes back to the muscle car days and things that Ford was doing with Ferrari and all that stuff, which is
absolutely, yeah.
Which is
Ford
really
has
cool.
always been Ford has always been at the top of that game. I think that they have always understood that if you provide support to these events, you are gaining direct customers simply because you're there.
Yeah.
You don't even have to win, but you're there. And the people that enjoy those sports and are spending all their money on being there and trying to participate and whatnot. And in off-road, the outdoor recreation industry is billions and billions of dollars, and even if the biggest part of that market right now is side-by-sides, Can-Ams and Polaris Razors and things like that. But those guys need a truck to pull it.
Yep.
And having Ford plastered on everything, they're doing it right. As much as I may not want to admit it, because I don't really want to race a Ford, they're doing it right, man. And they, like you said, they've done it right since the 60s.
Yeah.
They've never, it seems like they've never faltered in their support of aftermarket and of motorsport. They've always been there to help support. Now, Dodge, what it is now, not Ram, is doing a pretty good job of supporting the aftermarket with the customizations that you can do with their cars, and they're extremely popular. With social media people and whatnot, you see a lot of Mopar stuff out there, but they're just not that into the racing at a level that is relatable to the everyday person. I don't think.
Yeah, I'd agree. Definitely agree. One of the things when we first started chatting, I think this is really cool, is this pledge drive that you have going. And one of the things with motorsports, with racing, with just loving the internal combustion engine, is it is a community. It's a lifestyle, really, no matter what type of track we're racing at. And I thought what you guys are doing is really cool. So I wanted to give you, an opportunity to talk about it, share it, so that people who are listening, if they want to jump in and help. I think it's a really awesome cause, but I didn't want to take the words out of your mouth. I wanted to have you kind of explain to us this really cool drive you guys are doing.
Sure. So this next race season, which for me, I usually race about one race a year. That's about all I can afford to do, one big event a year with my own truck. And I wanted to give back to a community. I've had so many opportunities come up to live such an incredible life over the last 7 years related to off-road racing, and it's been unbelievable to me that me coming from South Texas, being a nobody, is rubbing elbows with important people in the industry, and all of that comes from just enjoying it and being a part of it and participating in whatever level I can, whether it's actually racing or just helping someone pit or just watching the race online and talking about it, things of that nature. So I really wanted to use this platform to give back, because I've been given so much opportunity. And over the last few months, I was trying to figure out how I wanted to structure that, what I wanted to do, how could I get people involved. with my race program and a charity at the same time. How do those two things work together? My initial thoughts were, well, let's do something blue collar. And this is still a goal of mine. I want to get micro in my truck. And because the sport of off-road racing, and I think motorsport for the most part is a blue collar sport. Most of the people that participate in it are blue collar type people. In my sport in particular, even the big top echelon racers, their primary companies are construction or concrete or, you know, earth moving equipment or all of that type of stuff. So or farming and things like that. They're involved in that blue collar world. So I wanted to get Micro in my truck and have him come out to an event and support his foundation. Didn't get those contacts made, didn't work out right. Maybe he'll hear some of this and eventually we can get it figured out. But that was in my mind is what I wanted to try to support, blue collar work. Well, halfway through last year, I went through some personal struggles in my life and I started seeking some outside help and found out that I'm autistic. And that being, I'm 36, that was a, you know, late in life diagnosis. It changed my life. It made me able to look back at the previous years and understand situations that had happened throughout my entire life. And it was incredible. And when that happened, I said, okay, this has been a big part of me that I didn't know existed. I started doing some research on it. There's not a lot of resources available for adults that are late in life diagnosed with autism. There's not a lot out there, you know, and I wanted to immediately, I need a help here. This is where I need to help. Again, it's one of those things just start coming together so easy that I know that I'm in the right spot. Local to me, I live in Lubbock, Texas. This is where Texas Tech is. And part of Texas Tech, there is the Burkhart Center for Autism Education and Research. I found them quickly in looking online and trying to find help and things like that. And I opened up a conversation with them. I said, hey, I race off-road cars. I want to try to raise money, you know, for a good cause through my race program. Are y'all interested in doing something like this? And they immediately responded, yes, we want, that sounds incredible. And I got to know the people over there at the Burkhart, told them that I had been diagnosed and late in life, and that this is all really new to me and a little overwhelming, but I want to be of use. And the next thing that fell into place was that the Burkhart Center has this program called the Transition Academy, where their students from 18 to 30 come in and they are able to teach them independent life skills so that they can get an apartment and live on their own and hold down a job and things like that. Well, part of that program is an internship part with local businesses. And some of those local businesses are blue collar. So man, it all tied together. And I said, this is it. This is exactly what we're going to do. So together we developed the Tequachi Motorsports Vocational Skills Fund. And I've got it set up as a pledge drive so that I can do two things. I can raise money and I can bring awareness to both what they're doing at the Burkhart and what we're doing in off-road racing. The reason I wanted to do a pledge drive was to make it easy for people to donate at any level at which they are comfortable. And what they'll do is we're racing the Mint 400. That means we're racing 400 miles. You pledge whatever amount from 1 penny to $1 million per mile that we race and that we complete. We have to complete those miles. So if we don't finish, it's doing a disservice to the fund. So again, that's another just pressure point on us that we have to get to the end. It doesn't matter what place we're in. It doesn't matter how long it takes, as long as we finish on time every mile. That's the goal. And in doing that, we can raise money, and then people can follow along on the live feed during the race and the live tracking map and through our social media stuff to see what the guys in the pits are up to and what they have to say, and get reports back from me while I'm in the race car and things like that. We can put all those things together so that we're raising money and we're introducing people to off-road racing that may not be a part of it, and in a fun, interactive kind of way. And I thought that was a super cool idea. There's also the option to just donate a one-time amount. If you want to do that, you can do that as well. But I thought the pledge drive was cool because it gets the people that are pledging have skin in the game now for us to finish. And I have to do my best to not let them down, and try to take as much of their money as I can.
I think that's really cool. So how would I find the pledge drive? How would I sign up for something?
Sure. So we've got a website sign up. It's Torah, TORRA racing.com/charity. There's also a link on that page, charity link on that page. And then all the social medias we've got as well. Most of my personal stuff is Tequachi Motorsports, TAQUACE_motorsports. That's on Instagram. YouTube, same name. You can find me, Bryant Blakemore, on Facebook. I'm pretty easy to track down. I try not to hide in the shadows too much, but the website is where everything is being collected. All the data is being collected. And then once you sign up for it, I'm doing, hopefully starting this week, I'll be doing like a weekly email blast to everyone to let them know progress on prep on the truck, and give them a little bit of information about products that we're using on the vehicle, and things about the burr cart and whatnot, so that people can stay in touch with us and with what we're doing.
It's very cool. This podcast was really awesome because I came into it thinking, man, I don't know a lot about desert off-road racing, but there's a lot of similarities between diesel and off-road. Sure. And the passion, of motorsports. Sure. and the team. Yep. Building. So I learned a lot. I'm probably gonna have to sit down with you again, maybe after the race, and chat with you more once I think of more questions.
Sure. I can't keep my hands out of it. So I'm busy with all kinds of stuff. I want to add a couple more things. One is that I have found that if you have any interest in motorsport, I recommend that you do not dip your toes into the off-road world unless you're ready to give it all up and only do that, because it will take over your life. It is that exhilarating and that challenging and that intense that what you experience during one off-road race, whether you're just spectating or participating or part of a pit crew or whatever, will give you stories for a lifetime. And I've seen it often that people that are just drag racers or street track racers, road racers, things of that nature, whatever they're into, as soon as they get dropped into the off-road world, they're like, oh, where has this been my whole life? This is the most amazing thing. And they come back, and usually they come back with their own race car. so I've seen it. So if you want to be a part of it, absolutely try it and do it. The other thing I wanted to mention is that in my upcoming schedule throughout the year, speaking diesel related, and maybe this is something we can work on for a future podcast, I am helping a team from the Netherlands that has a 2005 Dodge 2500 4-wheel drive, Cummins powered off-road race truck. And we are getting it put together. The truck used to be in the United States. It used to race with Core years ago. It's raced in Baja. Then it got shipped to the Netherlands. These guys bought it, and they've raced Dakar and some of the other off-road rallies on that side of the ocean. Well, they want to bring it back to Baja, and so we're getting it together so that we can race with them. We'll support their truck. at the Score Baja 1000 this year in November in a diesel. So in a
Very
Cummins
cool.
powered manual, 5-speed manual diesel truck. So there's more opportunity for some excitement, man.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, I appreciate you reaching out to us, sharing your story, giving me some insights into that world, and putting together a team. And like I said, I think what you're doing with the pledge drive is really awesome. So thanks again
Thank
for
you.
reaching out, and yeah, keep me updated on racing, new things you're working on, and yeah, I look forward to seeing what you do this year and how the truck performs, and also that race in November with that manual Cummins powered diesel
Oh
truck that's
yeah,
going to be Baja.
yeah, man. Again, I really appreciate you having me on the show. I'm thankful for opportunities to talk about what we're doing. I don't want to come off as bragging. I'm just really excited about all this stuff, and I want people to know about it and get involved. Anybody can do this at any level. There's opportunities for everyone to do anything, and I really like having the opportunity to share that with your listeners and maybe get some new people involved in the dust.
Don't forget, Diesel fans, make sure and head on over to Kershaw.kaiusa.com. Use code 20diesel for 20% off site-wide. It's a great way to be able to save some money on a really cool knife, whether you're a collector, an enthusiast, or you need something for EDC or hunting or fishing. They've definitely got you covered with a lot of choices for blade steel, handle material, opening mechanisms, and any budget out there. So we appreciate them offering that code to you guys. Also want to give a shout out to some of our Patreon supporters. Tyler Loewen at 23 Diesel, Caleb, John, all of you on Patreon, all of you who subscribe on YouTube podcast apps that are on our Discord, and sharing your truck stories, asking questions. We appreciate your feedback. You guys are the reason that we're on year 7 of doing this, and we couldn't do it without you guys. Until next time, keep the shiny side up.